Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight for our 7th episode of Thursday Night Live. We're in for a treat tonight. Our guest tonight is going to be fantastic. As I was thinking about that, though, I think every guest we have is fantastic. But tonight we are in for a special treat. But I just want to remind you with our Thursday Night Live that if you've missed some of the episodes, maybe this is the first time you've had a chance to take this in. The previous episodes are on my YouTube channel or on Saanich Baptist Church's YouTube channel or Facebook, and you are certainly welcome to go and have a look at those previous episodes. Well, I'm excited to be able to introduce to you Carla Munro. Welcome, Carla.
Hello, everybody.
Absolutely fantastic name. I have Carla Munro on the screen. I have my wife Carla just over to my left as well. This is great. I'm surrounded by Carlas tonight.
Oh,
Carla,
you're Carla.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, you had a chance to be on our pre-service chat a couple of weeks ago, and you just you gave us a little bit of a taste of some of the experience you've had, and 17 years ago. You were happily working in your career. And what were you doing 17 or 18 years ago?
I worked in the provincial government.
Okay.
In, several different ministries, but mostly in a role of training, organizing training for staff of the government. So
there you go.
Yeah.
And then 17 years ago, I believe it was a lady by the name of Judy invited you to a chapel service at William Head?
That's correct. Yeah, she was asking for volunteers, and I went out there just not knowing what to expect, and it was quite interesting because William Head, first of all, is a minimum security prison. It's not, there is maximum and then medium and minimum. So these people men are not considered a high risk. They're to offend. They're near to getting out. And so that was, anyways, I didn't know what to expect. And yeah.
And who knew?
Yes.
17 years later, you're not working for the government anymore.
No.
And you are involved in helping people who have maybe found themselves in some pretty tough spots, maybe sometimes of their own doing, maybe sometimes not. Mm-hmm. And you were being used to help in a significant way. So maybe just talk just a little bit about what some of those experiences have been like. You mentioned Royal Oak Middle School, William Head, you do some training in the community. Maybe just talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I guess I wanted to go back to the William Head one and just, I don't see the men as like convicts or offenders. I just see them as human beings who have, made a mistake that has cost them their freedom. And I know when I go out, the men are always like, why would you do this? And I say, because it's meaningful to me. And I see the difference it's made in my own family and with my children, and I just want to be able to share it, and it brings me joy to do that.
Wow.
So so that's one thing. When I've been in the community, I've worked with other churches and done classes for their parishioners, and mostly I go with this book. I use this book, Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Life. Trying to get the camera here. I'm not sure if that's going. And we go through the different chapters and mostly work with examples from the people in the group. And when I'm working with the young girls, or when I did, that was, slightly different. I was working with restorative justice group, and so they had a particular program, Girl Circle, but mainly I was teaching them a language of understanding their thoughts as different from their feelings. And I found that the youth seemed to able to pick this language much more quickly than the adults, because they had less to unlearn.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
And,
That's
yeah.
true. I want to get to that book and the founder, Marshall Rosenberg, in a minute or two. But you just shared an interesting thing. You said that you wanted to share with these other men some things that you had learned in your own family.
Yes.
That has helped. You told me an interesting story. I think it was yesterday. Would you mind sharing that?
Sure. When I was first learning, I have 10 brothers and sisters, and big family. And my mom always shouted at us. And I thought, well, when I have children, I'm not going to shout at my children. And guess what? You do what you learn. And I was shouting at them. As I said, I was a single mom. I had 4 children. There were 4 teenagers at that point. And I was trying to learn this new language and listen differently, speak differently. And I came home and told my daughter Simone about it, and she was just 13. And, within a few days of that, I had come downstairs on a Saturday morning, and there was a sink full of dishes. And my 3rd son, he had agreed that he would wash dishes after supper. That was one of the things he was willing to do. And so I started shouting at him, how could you do this? You said you would, and da, da, da. And my daughter came tramping down the stairs in her housecoat. She put her hands on my shoulders and she said, now, Mom, what are you feeling? And I said, well, I'm feeling frustrated and annoyed. And Mom, and what are you needing? And I said, I'm needing some accountability, to know that I can trust his word, that he said he would do it. Oh, and she said, okay, is there anything else? And I said, no, I think that's about it. And she said, well, Mom, what I'm needing is some peace and quiet in the house so I can sleep in on a Saturday morning. And we both just cracked up, and I don't remember who did the dishes, but it didn't matter. Yeah. She just really heard me, and that's what I needed at that point, just to be heard and know that my needs matter. And I think we all need that, to know that our needs matter.
Yeah. Well, for sure. We'll get into some of those details. That's such a great story. You've told me a few stories of, as you have gone in and you've helped these men transition from, their life, whether, I guess it's at the minimum security, but then into sort of mainstream life. Do you mind just sharing one or two of those stories, just how God's used you to help them?
Sure. Well, there's a program that we have in town called Mentorship, and it's camps. So it's community adult mentoring. And it's helping the men transition into the community. And there's 3 halfway houses in town. And so I have been matched with different men through the years to mentor them. And just watching them when they're having struggles. And like one man shared with me about that he got a construction job. And he was trying so hard to do everything correctly and safely. And these men that were on the construction site didn't seem to care. And they were drinking right on the job. And they were, they had a huge scaffolding thing. And here he said, no, let's do this safely. You take this apart and then you do this part. And then they would just bash it over and let the thing fall on the ground. And he's like, he held back. But when they did it, even after he said, please try to be safe, it actually, he had a construction hat on. He was following the codes and everything, but it actually cut right down, and he had a scar through his eye. And the thing had hit his head, so he had a bit of a concussion. So it was frustrating. They're dealing with their own stuff and then having these kinds of incidences. So he needed just to be heard about how frustrated he was with that. And And so it's somebody I can listen to them when they're really frustrated, just an ear to listen, and also celebrate with them when they have good things happen, and they would tell me about something that they were celebrating. So it was, we, as I said, in nonviolent communication, we call it celebrations and mournings, things that we mourn and regret or whatever. And so, does that answer?
Yeah. You
Lindsay?
also told me a story yesterday about a gentleman who you had helped through the nonviolent communication course and talking that through, went and got a job, posted a note to himself, and then there's some cool stuff there. Could you share that?
Yeah, this man, he was so angry when he first came into our group, and just was angry at his parole officer. And I just thought, there's no way he's going to get out unless he has the support of the parole officer. But he was in our course probably the longest I can remember, 2 years or something. And by the end of it, he had the best support from the parole officer, and he actually was able to meet. Usually they don't meet up with parole officers after they leave prison, but he was still meeting for coffee, and he had a really positive attitude. And I'd given him a poem about, our life is more about, or 10% about what happens to you and 90% how you respond to it. And he really liked that poem, and he put it up where he was working. And his boss acknowledged what a great attitude he had, and in fact asked him to start training new employees because he wanted that kind of positive attitude in the workplace.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes, it really was.
That is so amazing. One thing you mentioned to me yesterday when we were talking about this, that might probably a little confusing for some of us. You mentioned parole officers aren't usually talking to them once they get out of prison, but this is a different parole officer. This is someone who's on site, if I understand right, at William Head. Yeah. Okay.
So the parole officers in the prison are called internal parole officers. So it's an IPO. And then when they come out, they have a parole officer on the outside. So, so there's difference. Usually they don't see that internal one again once they come out. Yeah. So that man, seeing him is quite unusual. And
How long typically are you mentoring, walking with these gentlemen sort of post their time in William Head?
Well, usually, I go in and I actually read their file while they're in prison, and I get to know them a little bit. And then when they're out, usually it's about 6 months to a year or so that I'm mentoring.
Yep.
Just depending on the situation. And there's 3 halfway houses in town. And in fact, one of the halfway houses is asking us to come and teach nonviolent communication at the halfway house. So that's going to start up as soon as COVID numbers are more stable and stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You, let's move on a little bit. You showed us the book that is used a lot. And I believe that the author and founder of this particular communication tool is Marshall Rosenberg. Did I get that right?
Yes, that's right. So I'll put his name up there. There we go.
He's got an interesting story, if I understand.
Yeah. So when Marshall, as a child, moved to Detroit, Michigan, and there was a lot of race riots going on at the time. And he didn't really understand it, but several people, I think 40 some people were killed in those riots. And the next week when he went to school, he didn't realize that a last name like Rosenberg could cause, people to get angry. Right. And some boys in his class called him a kike, and he didn't even know what that meant. And after school, they were waiting for him, and they beat him up in the playground. And he just couldn't understand, why is it that just because of a name or something, people would be so violent to other people. And he wondered. He had a grandmother who was just the most kind-hearted person, even though she had been through a very hard life. And how could she stay connected to her compassionate nature, and yet other people couldn't? So he was on a search for a different way of speaking and a different way of listening. And that's when he came up with this language. So
it's a wonderful thing.
yeah.
So I've had a chance just to kind of look through some of this, and there's some really good teaching there for sure. I wonder if you could just sort of highlight, what do you think are some of the, I guess, the highlights or the main points that seem to really get through to people as you listen to people who are going through it, and they're kind of having those aha moments, those transition moments where they realize, wow, yeah, that's not the way I normally respond, or that's not, what would you say are some of those sort of salient points?
Sure. I'm guessing one of the things that people seem to remember is like just noticing. It's about that self-awareness to notice when you're really triggered, when you're upset, and see if you can rewind the tape, like a videotape. Okay. And think about what just happened, and what are you reacting to here, and then if you can be clear on your observation. Well, that person just said this, or they just did this, and then I'm thinking that they shouldn't have. So you can be equally punching out at them. They shouldn't have, and they deserve, and they are blaming and judging them, which can lead to violence. Or you could equally be punching in at yourself. I shouldn't have. That was a stupid thing to do. How could I have whatever done? And by doing that, that leads to depression, because it's shaming yourself, and leads to depression. So instead, can you hear some kind of blame, what you are thinking of as blame, and then go inside your own self, that self-talk from your head to your heart. Notice the judgments and then translate. So they just said, well, you never listen and you don't care about me. Whew. I feel really, really hurt, really disappointed. I try so hard to listen, and I wish they could acknowledge that they can see that I'm trying, and so I spend some time listening to my own self, that self-empathy, and that creates a spaciousness to then be able to, I wonder what's going on for them when they're saying that, that you never listen. And then I can go out and I put my hands this way out to their heart. So I'll do it to you. And say, like, I wonder what's going on for Lindsay. Lindsay, are you feeling really frustrated because you want to be heard, and there's something happened that you didn't feel like you were heard? And is there something you want to say here? And so then I put my energy there. But just want to say, it's really hard to put my energy on your heart and listen for you until I've done it for myself. So it's about creating some spaciousness, some time to process things, so you can get some clarity on what your needs are that weren't met in that situation, and then come back. So it's about asking for that time. Right now, I'm just noticing that I'm in a lot of pain here, and I'm going to need some time. So can we do this later tonight or tomorrow morning? Can we have that discussion?
Yeah.
And requesting what you need. So
not expecting the other person to read your mind or know what it is, or Exactly.
And things that are triggers for you won't necessarily be triggers for me, but it's about knowing my own triggers and what needs, like in the past, if I haven't had those needs met for sort of respect or, empathy or whatever, it's knowing that that's going to be a sore point with me. And so I kind of more self-awareness again. Yeah. So it doesn't come up as a big surprise.
Yeah. So when we talk about nonviolent communication, we're not just talking about, out on the streets or, in the schoolyard. We're talking about pretty much any human interaction we have. Am I right on that?
Exactly. Any
Yeah.
difficult conversation. It's just, so we call it compassionate communication.
Yeah.
We call it respectful communication.
Mm.
And but he wanted it to be called nonviolent communication. Marshall did, because of Gandhi's work.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
he talks a little bit about that in the book.
There's so much teaching that we can discover through Jesus, and some of the letters to the churches where it talks about respecting the person that you are talking to, communicating. Actually, in Ephesians, it talks about communicate in such a way that it will benefit the other person. Speak in love. It sounds like some of what we're learning in the story of Jesus in his teachings are very much rooted in this communication. Now, when you said that they have to do sort of a self-talk, you have to sort of take that moment. Is that truly a moment? Like, are they saying, "Hey, I need a timeout," or are you teaching them to be able to, in that tense moment, to be able to do a quick sort of evaluation and process some things? Or maybe just talk a bit about that.
Sure. I would say initially it might be a timeout until they get to know themselves better.
Okay.
After doing some work for a while, they can probably do it in the moment and be able to speak about, I noticed I was getting really triggered right here. And and then, so it's, over time they could do it in the moment. I doubt if they could do it initially.
Yeah.
Most of them that have come to the group certainly can't do it initially.
Yeah. And so you just continue. You mentioned that I believe you said this was a 15-week course, 2 hours a session, lots of reading, and I guess just personal work as well, where they're processing some of their own things.
Exactly. And I want to say a big part has become over time about meditation as well. So slowing things down, to take a breath, to notice what's going on. And so one of the lady that I work with, her name is Doris, and she often does a meditation for us. And it's maybe 5 minutes, but it's again back to self-awareness. Can you notice what's going on? Breathe, notice your heart, and that's huge, because when we're triggered, our amygdala is what's driving the whole show, and we're into fight and flight and freeze. We're really not able to access the cortex, the neocortex. That's where the intelligent decisions come from.
Okay.
And until we can breathe and calm ourselves, then we can have access to that part of the brain. So that's another whole lesson. So
yeah. No, this is good. We know we can't cover it all tonight. So it sounds to me like you're trying also to sort of empower the individual to recognize that they don't have to just react. You said life is what, 10% what happens to you, 90% how you respond. Did I get that right?
Exactly right. Yes.
Yeah. So if that's what you're saying, it sounds to me like you're trying to coach and mentor us from sort of being able to claim ourselves as victims solely, and just sort of take, take charge of our own circumstance and where we're at in order to be able to take that step forward. Am I
absolutely right? And I tell them they're responsible for their thoughts, they're responsible for their feelings, they're responsible for their needs and their actions to meet their needs. That nobody else is responsible to make them happy or to meet their needs.
Wow.
We can request support to meet our needs, but we don't get stuck in that person is the only person that can meet my needs.
Wow. Can you restate that, because that was massive?
Okay.
It's nobody else's
responsibility to make us happy. And
wow.
So it's our responsibility to meet our own needs, to be aware of our feelings, to figure out what needs are not met, and to make clear requests to meet those needs.
Hmm.
Knowing that there's a rainbow of possible ways to meet our needs.
Hmm.
So we don't want to mix up needs and strategies to meet needs.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's lots of possibilities. And I think that is a huge learning for them. You mean that I could do this or this or this? And I thought there was only one way. The IPO had to do this to, get that form filled out. And, oh, there's other possibilities. I think that's a big aha.
Yeah.
And they realize that how they respond to the IPO makes a big difference to the support they're going to get.
Yeah.
And, they keep wanting the IPO to change. And finally, they figure out they're the ones who have to change.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
wow. You must get a lot of pushback, a lot of challenge, a lot of probably anger.
Yeah, we get anger. And mostly I prefer when the guys come to the class out of choice. But sometimes they have been required to go.
Right.
And we're not a course, we don't get paid or anything. This is purely volunteer. And when they come in and tell me, well, my IPO recommended that I be here, and I do my best to get them to the point where they choose. And because that's not the kind of energy for learning, Yeah. But one good thing is that I was thinking about the IPOs. I have a girlfriend, Raj Gill, on the mainland, and she teaches nonviolent communication also. And she does quite a bit of training with the staff of the prisons. So that's
good.
That was really, really, really encouraging to know that they value it enough to be willing to have her teach them and pay her for that. And so,
wow. Yeah, that would be outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
Be able to have not only those the people that are watching getting trained, but also those who are looking over them. Hey, I wanted to interact with you on there's the 4 components, if you like, of nonviolent communication, and it says the following key distinctions are made when practicing nonviolent communication. And I'd just like to read sort of the bullet point, and then you can just give us a little bit of insight into what that means. Is that good?
Sure. Yep, that's great.
Yeah, so the first one says this: observations are distinct from evaluations, judgments, labels, and analysis.
Mm-hmm. So actually, it was interesting that we just did that class today with the men. We had an online class, so I was in a Zoom. Well, they have a WebEx instead of this kind of format, but and we were explaining about that an observation is something that is really clear, like we see through our eyes, hear with our ears, taste, smell, touch. So use our 5 senses, something that you could see through a camera, like I see you now on my computer. And so that's a clear observation. Now, if I start to say, I like what you're wearing, but I don't like this, and whatever, those kinds of things, those kinds of judgments about you on the screen, that would be an evaluation.
Okay.
So we want to be really clear. This is what happened. Like, this is what the person said. This is what they did. Here is my judgment about them. And because people often mix that up. Okay. So one fellow came in today and he was pretty angry about something. And he said he screwed him over. And we said, so is that an observation or evaluation? It's an observation. He screwed him over. And then he said, well, he put in the form 2 weeks ago, and somebody else put it in after them, and he got his approval before the guy who had put it in 2 weeks ago. Oh, so that's the observation. And then he was like, and he wasn't so happy about that. So the evaluation, he felt that he screwed him over, was clear observation.
So if I'm hearing you then, so if we start moving from observation into the evaluation and sort of judgments, is that meaning that we're kind of closed off to possibly being connected with, right?
We're closed off and we're less likely to get what we're wanting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if we're in a place of evaluating and judging somebody, they're going to be on the defensive and they're not going to be hearing us at all.
Yeah.
So how can we, like, as I said, rewind and say, okay, this is what I'm noticing. We put in the form 2 weeks ago, and I noticed that this man who got into this house, he only put in his 1 week ago. And I'm curious about what went on there. Can we stay open and curious rather than judging and demanding and all of that?
Right. Open, curious, demanding. So yeah, when you're helping and training and teaching, you're trying to help them know, first of all, how to receive communication, and then also give it out is what
exactly. In a way that people are more likely to hear.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Let's go to the second one.
Sure.
Feelings are distinct from perceptions.
Yeah. So, often we can feel upset and we can perceive that somebody intentionally wanted to hurt us. So that is just our interpretation or perception about that. And I could tell by their tone of voice, and I can have all of this evidence about what their intentions were. And so that would be our perception about it.
Okay.
But the bottom line is, if I can just stay with, I noticed this happened and I'm feeling disappointed or sad or frustrated, and just even those words for feelings are a big deal. I mean, the men know scared, mad, glad, happy. That's it. So we just teach them all the nuances of feelings to start to create that awareness, that self-awareness. And I'm not sure if I answered that question.
No, you did. You're learning to express how you feel versus trying to discern why they did what they did and coming up with your judgment. No, I get that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I want you to tell me that that's what I'm supposed to do, but I think I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go to the third one. Needs and values are distinct from strategies.
Yeah. So I often give this example. So I really want to go to the airport at, tomorrow. And my strategy is that Lindsay should drive me. Now, if I get stuck in that strategy and you say, you know what, I can't drive you, then I could get really hurt and caught up in that. I have a need for transportation and support to get there. And this is one possibility. No, I could take a bus. I could take a bike. I could, get a cab. I could, whatever. All different possibilities. And so I don't want to mix up my need for support with all the possible strategies to meet that need for support. And not get, my preference would be that you would drive me. So no, I have a preference. I like it that way. But, if it doesn't work out, then I'm open to other possibilities. Yeah.
Wow, it sounds so simple. Doesn't it?
It seems so simple, but it doesn't work that way.
But it's not really. I mean, it's significant stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When people start blocking us. Okay. Requests are distinct from demands. Yeah, talk about that.
Okay. So, how I know that something is a request, I thought when I first learned nonviolent communication, requests, oh good, people are willing to do what I'm requesting. So they're going to take my turn. They're going to take out the garbage and the recycling and do it cheerfully. And so I thought, how come they're not doing it? I mean, I'm saying, would you be willing to take out the garbage and, by 7 o'clock in the morning? And no. So if they say no and I get angry, then no matter how beautifully I've phrased that request, I'm still making a demand because I am attached to, you're going to take out the garbage. So that's still a demand. So I want to be able to say, when are you willing to do something? I'm willing to hear yes, no, or maybe, some time later or whatever. So it's the energy that I come with. And am I willing to engage with you long enough to connect and find out that your no is really to hear that that's a yes to some other need of yours that's more important at that point in time. So I don't take it personally that you're saying no to me and it's a rejection, but that I'm curious, is there a different timing that would work for you, or what is it that's really important at that point why you're saying no or whatever? So I work with you to collaborate, to meet both our needs.
Yeah. Wow.
And not compromise. I say collaborate.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Not compromise,
right?
But collaborate.
Yeah.
Because I think both people's needs can be met very beautifully.
Yeah.
I've found very few that didn't. How's that?
Yeah. Oh, this is good stuff. I want to go back to a story that you shared yesterday with me. You said there was a gentleman who was leaving, and I believe he was meeting with his daughter, and he wasn't sure how that was going to go. And yeah.
Okay. I think actually it was his son that he was.
Son. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So the son had come to visit him in prison and had not seen him in years. And I guess they had a real fight to be, years prior. And it was about money and whatever. And I didn't hear any details, but this son was coming to visit him. And he said, I really need your support here because I'm not sure how I'm going to handle this. And I don't want to fight with him. I really want us to have a conversation. Anyways, the son came and he had left his wife in the parking lot in the car and said, look, this is only going to take 10 minutes. Within 10 minutes, we'll probably be shouting at each other. So you can just wait for me here. Well, he went in and the dad was just listening so differently and really hearing what he had to say and how upset he was over the years. And he just reflected and empathized with his son. And the son was like, who is this person in front of me? Well, the conversation went on for an hour and a half. And so he came back to the group the next week and said, you won't believe this. But I actually was able to communicate with him in such a different way. And the other lady who was helping me, she said, you had one hand on one leg, and Carla, you had the hand on the other leg, and you made sure that I did not say what I really wanted to say. But he was able to just be in a completely different space. And so, yeah.
Carla, that must be so rewarding.
It really was rewarding to see this man's growth through the years. As I said, he was in the group for quite a while. So,
Carla, you are you're living out and I mean, one of the major values that I believe that Jesus has for us as humans, in that each person that we come across is of infinite value and worth.
Absolutely.
Created in the image of God. Honestly, the early church would never have got off the ground if it hadn't been for one messed up individual named Peter.
That's true.
And then Paul, who was literally having Christians jailed and put to death, and Paul was a mess. And yet Jesus hung in there with these guys and valued and respected, and they turned, and amazing things were done. And what you're talking about is it is so good. Man, my wife is close by, and some of the things you said I'm going to have to work on for sure. I can see it helping in families.
Yes.
I can see it helping, like you said, in the workforce.
Yeah.
You know, with our grumpy neighbor, maybe.
Absolutely.
Do we have grumpy neighbors? I don't know. Some of us do.
Absolutely, we do. And just in general, like I've worked with families, like I know there's a man and his wife and their 3 children, and just being in their living room and just working about, they were teenagers and hearing kinds of things that they were dealing with. And so I think it really helped, but mainly for the parents to listen, because a lot of times we don't listen. I certainly wasn't listening very well when I first learned this. So.
Yeah, right off the top, I noted that you said we are not heard very often as people. We're not heard well, and we need to learn to listen.
Yeah.
And then you said, and to celebrate.
Yes, to celebrate. I want to tell you one thing that really is, one of the guys really liked it. He said the letters in listen, LISTEN, are the same letters in the word silent, SILENT. So if we can be silent and listen, and you can notice the judgments in our head, I don't agree with that, I don't like that, whatever, we can still be silent and just know that's their truth. That's for them, that's what's important today. And and not just have to get our little edge in every time.
Yeah.
But anyways, so back to celebration. You wanted to ask me something about?
Well, I didn't really want to ask. I just thought it was interesting that was one of the first things you said right off the top. We aren't heard much. We need to be heard. We don't listen well. And then you said, and we need to learn to celebrate with others. And I thought, isn't that true? We get beat down and knocked down so often.
Yeah.
Life is not easy. And this pandemic has been a challenge.
It has, yeah. And so when there are joyful moments, to be able to share someone's joy, that's really important.
Yeah. Well, do you have any last thoughts you would like to share with everybody tonight? As we said, there's no way we can get into all of it, but I just wanted us to scratch the surface a bit. Offer some thoughts, maybe a few little tips.
I guess self-empathy is a main thing I would leave people with, that especially during the pandemic, to be gentle with yourself, like self-care. Some people think it's selfish to do things for yourself, but we really can't be able to keep on pouring out and giving if we don't do the self-care. That it's so important. And Marshall called it that it's not selfish, it's self-full. To look after ourselves. So whether it's with, like for me, I do yoga, I do meditation to, keep myself centered and calm, and to notice when I'm really needing some empathy. So I can call my friend Judy or my sister Bernadette, and I have lots of sisters, so in case they watch this video, I better say, call one of my sisters. But so being able to call a friend for empathy, somebody that you can count on and trust. And that's really important to have that, and to pray. I pray all the time through the day. Like, I mean, if I don't know what to pray, I just keep saying Jesus's name like 10 times. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Or I ask the Holy Spirit for wisdom, for clarity. Those things, those are crucial for me. So I guess encourage people to lean into their spirituality when they're feeling overwhelmed.
Self-care is not easy.
No.
That concept that we need to put the mask on ourselves first in order to help others is not, I don't know, it's just not an easy thing. to do. But you're so right. God loves not only the people you're trying to help, Carla, or the people that I'm trying to help, but he actually loves you, and he loves me, and desperately wants to embolden us and empower us and give us his presence that can be so amazing. Mm-hmm. Well, Carla, I just want to say thank you so much for this. It's been fantastic. Appreciate what you're doing on behalf of those men. And what a treat, what a joy to hear those stories. And I just want to say to everyone who's listening, if you came in halfway, I encourage you to go back to the social media channels. You'll find these on my Facebook or the church's Facebook or YouTube, or also on my YouTube channel as well. You can hear this in entirety. You might want to check out Marshall Rosenberg's resource on nonviolent communication or compassionate communication. Yeah, that's it right there.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say thank you to you, Lindsay, for what you're doing too, to help people in the church. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, Carla. It's a lot of fun to do this and to be able to just share the stories and be of encouragement to one another. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Have a great week.
Okay.